Have you ever worked incredibly hard and still not gotten the results you expected? Maybe you didn't get the promotion, maybe you didn't get a raise, maybe you built a business, created offers, showed up consistently, posted all the content, served your clients well, and still didn't make enough money to support yourself? I can relate to that one. That gap between effort and reward can be deeply disorienting because many of us were taught a pretty simple formula. Work hard, be responsible, keep going, get better. It's so built into our capitalistic culture, especially that work harder part. And to a degree, that's honorable. That's having a great work ethic and all those things. But it can also get us in trouble because what happens when it doesn't work out the way we've been taught, which is the only way to be successful is to work hard. Eventually it's going to pay off. Keep working hard. It'll pay off. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does. But I've been hearing this a lot lately from clients. So some of them work inside companies, some of them are entrepreneurs, their circumstances are all different. But I just started noticing over the last couple months, I'm hearing a lot of people say, I just feel like I'm working so hard and I'm not getting the ROI I've expected. And these are not entitled people. These are people doing the work. And they're saying, gosh, why isn't this paying off? What is it? What's going on? So I understand that. I've asked it of myself so many times. For 8 years, I worked really hard to build a private coaching practice. I created all kinds of content. Now, it wasn't leadership-oriented, business-oriented content like I'm doing today. It was very much about personal growth and sort of, think about Oprah and living your best life. And I've always loved diving into the subconscious, where all of our limiting beliefs and habits and coping devices that don't serve us anymore, where those live, and how to break those habits. So I loved that work and I'm really, really good at it. It's part of what made me a great leader through my career. And it's part of why I'm so good at helping other companies with all kinds of, work-related friction or just improving leadership communication and clarity and navigating disruption and all these things. They're all tied together. But for 8 years, I really was focused on just getting individual, personal growth clients. And oh my gosh, I worked so hard. And it never paid off financially. So I kept looking for what I was missing, okay? Maybe I needed better marketing. Maybe I needed more consistency. Maybe I needed to take another course on how to, build an online business, whatever. Maybe I needed stronger messaging. Maybe I needed to work through another belief about money, limiting belief, of course, visibility or success. And eventually I had to consider something that I had not considered for all those 8 years. And it was much more practical and kind of simple, but also painful. The business model I was trying to build my business inside of, it just wasn't producing enough demand. So yes, that was painful, but it was also useful because my hard work had value. My clients, I still coached hundreds of people and my clients benefited from it greatly. They loved it. I loved doing it. But the market wasn't really rewarding that work at a level that I could support myself in the way I want to. Right? I am not good at being frugal. I love money and I love the choices money gives me and I love beautiful things and whatever. So I'm unapologetic about that. So I suppose under certain circumstances, I could have supported myself, but I couldn't support myself in a lifestyle, even like I used to live when I was an employee in various leadership roles. And so both of those things were true. I was working really hard, and the market wasn't rewarding that work at a level that was, big enough for me, was creating enough income for me. And that's where I think this conversation gets a little more complicated and interesting, is it's not just about working harder, but nor is it the other side of the coin. Hard work doesn't matter anymore. I mean, oh my gosh, if I were to believe a speck of the things coming into my Instagram feed about how, I was just sitting watching TV with my husband and he didn't even know I was making $10,000 a month doing something, to help us pay our bills. It's not that not working hard is the ticket to success, right? Although we see that sometimes. We see sometimes people who, whether it's luck or right place, right time, or whatever you want to call it, they seem to have great success without having to put out, all the years and years of hard work. But most people do both. We work hard and some things pay off and some things don't. But the hard work matters because it does build skill. If I had coached 3 people instead of, 300, I would not be as good of a coach as I am. It's part of what made me better and better at what I did, and at coaching and creating content and messaging and all the things. I got so much better at it. So it builds skill, it builds stamina, it builds tenacity, it builds credibility. You can go back into my YouTube feed here. There's hundreds of videos. They're just not all on leadership topics, right? But you'll see all kinds of stuff. And hopefully if you listen to them, you will see that I know what I'm talking about. It's good stuff. So all of that hard work did pay off. And then if you think of the metaphor of going to the gym, right? I'm still doing my reps, my biceps are still getting bigger. Okay. I just need to go do something now where bigger biceps really matters. And in the business model I was in, there just wasn't enough demand, in that market at the prices I charged and things like that. We don't have to get into all the complications of that, but I want to now put effort in to all the things that matter, not just the inner work. And this is what I, have been helping my clients with. It's like two sides of the coin. Yes, there's always inner work that blocks us from abundance, we'll say. That, we're afraid. I had a client once who was so afraid of being visible on social media or wherever because she thought it would trigger a chain of events where people would be really hateful to her and a lot of bad things would happen. And not surprisingly so, she had a relative who soon after becoming an entrepreneur was attacked. And in a random act of violence kind of way. But so, of course, her psyche would connect those two things. So there's always work to do in worthiness, limiting beliefs we have. If I make more money, it's just going to mean I have to pay more taxes or whatever. I'll pay the taxes, baby. Anyway, there's always inner work. But there's also the external. There's the external, and it changes. Markets change, companies change. I don't care if you're an employee, or an entrepreneur, it changes. And if you're listening to this anywhere near where I'm recording it, which is the summer of 2026, there's so much change right now in all industries because of AI and how it's changing things, and also how it's creating this understanding that the workplace 2 years from now, how we do the work we do 2 years from now, 1 year from now, for sure by 5 years from now, it's going to be different. And none of us really knows what that what that will look like, right? So there's all this uncertainty and disruption, and that matters. Timing matters, demands matter, technology matters, the market condition, relationships we have, our network, it matters, the rooms we can be in, organizational politics, right? You could be doing all the right things at work and feeling like what you're doing for, is sort of taking the high road of staying out of the politics. But sometimes those politics is what will get in the way of the promotion you want. So strategy matters. And, sometimes, frankly, luck matters. And the relative value of skills changes. I think that's what we see in AI. Always technology creates this situation where skills that used to be highly valued are not as highly valued anymore, right? So things that I was in real estate for many, many, many years, and real estate was very disrupted when, if we want to call it the .com era, when the internet got really like we're using it at home, it's a day-to-day thing. And MLSs went online. That's where all the property data is. And then websites started popping up that had property listings on them. And suddenly it's not the realtor who has the only access to the data, because back in the old days when everything was in an MLS book, as a consumer, other than reading a few, lines in an ad in the Sunday paper, you are driving around looking for signs in a yard. You didn't have any access to what properties were for sale. You had to come to a realtor to get that. And so realtors had this lock on information. That was their value, or part of it, but it was a big part of the value proposition because it's at the front end. And because we got to have a client, right, before we can write an offer. So when everything changed on that, and all of a sudden having this information, it isn't valuable anymore. Anybody can just go online and get that. So then as a realtor, everybody had to figure out, well, where is my value? Well, of course, their real value is in the actual transaction, and of course that just gets more true every year because the real estate transactions get so complicated and they're so litigious. And so, any good realtor can explain their value in those high value things that they can do, even as AI does more and more of the behind the scenes stuff and may schedule your home inspections and whatever. That's not the value of your agent. The value of your agent is writing an agreement, handling the problems that come up with inspections, like all those things. And so technology always ends up changing, and AI is going to do that in a huge way. What we used to consider valuable, that we would pay people to do, and what now is no longer valuable because, technology can do it better, faster, more accurately, and cheaply. So we're not paying people to add up numbers by hand, right? We're using technology for that. And so I was going to say a calculator. We're so far beyond that. Sorry, just had an aging moment. Anyhow, you know what I mean. And so that's the impact that technology has. And I think every big technology, you could go back to the beginning of the industrial era, right? And every big technology really, really changes that. And I think that's what we're seeing with AI right now. And that's why it's got so many people freaked out, because they're not sure if AI is going to take their job. I think it's much more likely that somebody who understands AI will take your job if you don't learn what AI can do and how it can help you in your work. But anyway, technology always makes one skill more valuable and another less valuable, because it doesn't make all skills not valuable, right? It makes other things more valuable. Well, who can read this output then and make sure AI got it right? Put the human factor in it, right? It's artificial intelligence. It's not human intelligence. And so there's always going to be things that we will, as humans, will be so much more skilled at. So companies end up changing, right? They change direction. They lay off in big ways, right? We've seen, I know so many people in big, long-standing companies with big layoffs at top levels, right? This is not just we're cutting back and, customer service is being cut back or something. These are high-level people being retired, forcibly retired. And it's hard when you're one of those people. You're like, wait a minute, I have worked so hard for this. Now, not only am I not going to get a promotion, I'm out of work and need to go find another job. So a person can be doing excellent and, the organization just decides that is no longer a priority. We're going off in this direction now. It's not fair. And when we don't understand what caused the gap between that effort and the reward, we tend to personalize it. And that's the most painful part. A disappointing outcome often becomes evidence in our own mind that the story we already were afraid might happen is actually true. I'm not good enough. I'm not chosen. Things work for other people, but they don't work for me. There must be something inside me blocking success. Like whenever those disappointing events occur, then the classic reptilian, primitive part of our brain that is so geared only for survival says, oh my gosh, it's time to be fearful to protect ourselves. And it usually gets very personal with things like, I'm not good enough. I'm missing it. This works for other people. It doesn't work for me. And those stories have been there a long time. So long. Probably since you were a child, but at any point you've been carrying them for a long time already. They're embedded in your subconscious. Long before you miss that promotion or the sales don't come or your business is struggling or you get looked over for a promotion or whatever, that major disappointment happens that suddenly feels like it's proving that fear to be true. So yes, the outcome is real. I'm not trying to sugarcoat things. But the meaning that we assign to it is often incorrect. So I was talking to a client recently who is in a sales profession and she's been successful before. She knows how to, do the work. She's very good at it and has worked her butt off all year and has made less money than almost any year she's ever been in business. And so in our session, we were talking about this because she's so frustrated and feels like she's just missing something. And it feels like it's pointing to her specific painful limiting beliefs and fears. It's not like her effort disappeared or her skills disappeared. But in this case, it is that the conditions changed. The market changed. Things happened with the people she was selling to that didn't, have anything to do with her or her skills. It was just life. Life was lifing. And it meant she didn't get the sale. And so it's so easy to say, well, like, what am I doing wrong? Or what am I missing? Or some kind of personal, what's my inner block I need to clear? Well, some of it was an inner block. And so we worked on that in our session. But some of it is also just the outside world, the outside things that we can't control. They didn't call, those internal beliefs and limiting beliefs that she had did not cause, say, interest rates to increase. I know a lot of people in the realtor world. And of course, residential real estate is very challenged right now for several reasons, not the least of which is interest rates. And, those limiting beliefs don't cause companies to freeze hiring new people or to freeze promotions or to lay off a whole department or whatever. They didn't cause my weak business model to suddenly have a strong demand. It wasn't the inner work. It was the external part. So we have to be careful about making ourselves responsible for circumstances we did not create and we cannot control. People can spend years trying to heal themselves so that they can somehow control these external conditions. And you can't do that. We can't make other people do things, and we can't make, the economy different. We can't make the sunshine on a rainy day. There's just things that are always going to be out of our control. And trying to talk ourselves into, oh, it's just more inner work that I need to do. Well, that's exhausting, because that's also not fair when it's an outer circumstance that is causing the problem. So what do we do? When these payoffs don't come, because it's a real thing. Like I said, I've had several clients who are just like, I've worked so hard and it's not paying off. So I have, no magic formula here, but I do have 4 things that I think are going to help. Okay. The first is something I'm calling accurate attribution. Okay. What actually contributed to the outcome? Now, you probably have to do some research. Don't go with what pops into your head right away, because here's what I can promise you. Because of the way that reptilian part of our mind, because it's so primitive and the way that it works, it's going to start bringing you, if you sit down and think, okay, well, what really caused this? Let's get an accurate attribution. I liked what that Brenda had to say. Okay. Your brain is right away going to throw all kinds of things at you that are probably mainly self-criticism. Oh, well, you didn't post enough content. You didn't have a strong enough CTA. You didn't suck up to the boss enough. You didn't, it's going to be very you oriented. It's going to be very critical. That's not what we're going for. We got to get out of that mindset. Okay. So get yourself, released from that. Just set it aside. Kind of, you can even think of it like, I'm going to bracket that. And I hear all that inner criticism, and there may be some things I need to do different. But for now, I'm going to set that aside. And you may need to use AI. I use ChatGPT for this kind of thing all the time, of just like, okay, so do the research. Why didn't this work? What's going on? What's happening in the market? What am I missing? If you're not already, you need to be using AI like as an advisor. So you're asking it questions. What am I missing? Where are my blind spots? What did I not think about? What did I not say? Here's what I did. You should be talking into, your AI, whether it's Chat or Claude, whatever Perplexity, Gemini, whatever you're using. Just speak into it. I'll speak these very long, and don't try to be articulate. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need you to be articulate. That's the beauty of it. It can see through that and then come up with a really concise response. So you want to give it the problem and ask it, and I like to not only ask it to solve the problem or tell me, sometimes it's not something to solve per se. It's something you want research done on, you want more information about. And before I have it go do that little task, I'll ask it to ask me questions. What else do you need to know to give me a better response for this? And it'll ask me, questions. And then, I answer them, and then it goes and, does its thing. So I have objective, like grounded in data answers, not what my afraid mind is, not my mindset that's already dropped into, there must be something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. It doesn't work for me, right? Like that part of you is not going to give you a good answer to this. It's not going to give you an accurate answer. Okay. So, is it skill, timing, the market, strategy, who knows, weak demand, whatever, favoritism in the workplace, any kind of thing like that. The organization is rewarding something different, maybe something even different than it says it rewards. The answer is usually a combination of these things, but accurate attribution helps you get there honestly. Like, if anything you're coming up with is self-criticism, I would just be suspicious. Now, maybe like one time I sent an email that I didn't mean to send. Like, it was a thread, and I had forgotten by the time I sent it to a whole group of people that there was this other conversation down in the bottom of the thread. And so I sent it to this whole group of people and threw myself under a bus sort of with that. So there are times for sure we make a mistake, and that could be an accurate attribution. I made a mistake on that. I should have never sent that email. I should have started over with a fresh email instead of replying to a whole group of people, something that was, started before. Anyway, we make mistakes, absolutely, but life doesn't turn on that dime of you made one mistake in the workplace or in your business or whatever. Everybody who's successful makes a lot of mistakes. In fact, the most successful people I've known, two things they have in common. They're willing to try stuff because they can handle it when it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, they walk away from it quickly. Like they don't try to hang on to it to prove it should work or it could work or whatever. So sure, we all make mistakes, but that's not going to be the kiss of death for you. So accurate attribution. The second is the permission to be disappointed. Like you just deserve to be disappointed. When you've invested a lot of energy, time, hope, money, the sacrifice of time, and hard work, and the outcome doesn't come, that's just disappointing. And you get to feel that. And you don't need to rush towards some kind of lesson. This happens a lot, especially for those of us who tend to be optimistic. We rush right to the lesson and let's get over the disappointment and leap right into the optimism for the future and the next thing we're going to try or whatever. We deserve and you need to process and allow yourself to have that disappointment and grief if it's grief. I certainly had to grieve, that this one-on-one model I had in my business didn't work, and all the time and energy and just how I visualized my life that wasn't going to end up being quite that way. So there was a lot of grief there. So that's fine. We got to feel the feelings, because if we don't, they will come back to bite us in the butt later. Okay. It's okay to say I expected this to work and it didn't, and that hurts. That's not weakness. It's honest. It's an honest response to loss. Okay, the third thing, separating the outcome from your identity. So a missed promotion doesn't automatically mean you're unqualified, or struggling in your business doesn't mean you have nothing valuable to offer. I am an amazing coach, one-on-one. And in a group and as a speaker, which is not really coaching, but whatever. Back to the one-on-one business. That wasn't struggling because I wasn't a good coach. I was having clients who were staying with me for long periods of time because it was so valuable to them. And even the ones that were with me for shorter periods of time, they got what they need, they loved it, and they moved on. So the problem wasn't I'm not a good coach. You think of it in another industry that's maybe not yours, will be easier to see it, is something like performing actors, Broadway performers, whatever. There are so many talented people that can't end up making a living because of just the way that industry is, right? It's so fickle. It's so much about who you know, somebody discovering you, some random thing, right? And so there's all kinds of super talented people that are waiting tables or doing some other thing, not because they're not good at what they do, but they just haven't gotten into the opportunity. So we don't want to connect these things with our identity, okay? The fourth thing then is deciding where our effort is going to matter the most next, right? Because I got to move forward. So where do I put my effort that's going to move the lever the most, be the most effective? Okay. And this is super practical. And again, a great thing to brainstorm with AI, like in a business like mine, like, do I keep going? Do I need to adjust the strategy? I did some of that, and then eventually just came to no, I just need to pivot entirely back into my other love, which is leadership. And so obviously that's what I did, but you can ask it, do you need, especially if you're employed by somebody else, do you need clearer expectations? Do you need to have a conversation with your boss about, maybe there are changing priorities, or what do I need to do to put myself in a position to be ready for this promotion, or to get, a raise or, whatever it is. Do we need to change the business model, change the offer, find a different market, add a side hustle, another income stream or something? Do we need to leave? Is it time to quit the job or close the business or whatever, right? Like all these good questions. And even though some of it may be painful, it is in asking those questions, the persistence not to accept that this evidence means there's something wrong with me, because that's just not true. I'm telling you. I don't care if you made a mistake. I don't care if you need to learn more. That's not something wrong with you. That's a trainable thing. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with you. You are good enough. You are worthy. You don't have to do a damn thing. The fact that you're here and you're breathing and listening, you are worthy. Worthiness is not something we earn. It's something we are. Where will my effort more likely create value now? Now I'm standing with myself, in solidarity with myself. There's no self-abandonment there. When I'm saying, coming up with the answer is obviously I'm not good enough. Obviously I suck at this. Obviously then we're abandoning ourselves. Through that self-criticism, it's like stepping away. So we want to be our best advocate. And this question, how do I create value now, applies to people in leadership positions too. Because leaders create incredible frustration when they're like praising hard work and then actually rewarding, like with a raise or promotion or something, other qualities. Right? Then it's confusing. It's like, wait, I thought working hard was all I had to do. Oh, wait, I have to, do this other thing too, or have this other quality too. So we've got to be clear in our communication, because employees shouldn't have to reverse engineer themselves into how they get a raise, how they get a promotion. All of that damages trust. Like, we just need to be honest, straightforward, truthful about it. A good leader should be able to explain what a strong performance actually looks like. It's not just the hours, it's what you're doing. It's maybe how much you're using AI to work smarter, whatever it is for your company. Which results matter the most? What does the next role require? Where is this employee currently strong, right? Like, what are their strong suits and where are the gaps? And if your organization has changed what it values, then that needs to be communicated clearly. So people understand whether or not advancement is even realistically still available. I worked for a company for years, and there was, the next promotion for me, I would have been a great job for me. I was super qualified, but there wasn't any realistic possibility of getting them. People had been in them, long term. Nobody was quite retirement. I mean, sure, something crazy could have happened, but it was a small company, so there weren't that many. When there's only one or two positions, that makes it very hard to get promoted up. Because first of all, there's only one or two, and you need the people in them to leave. So you gotta, all these things matter, and they're not pointing to anything wrong with you. They're pointing to just factors that are playing a role. So if you're the leader, when the rules change or something, a skill is becoming less important than it used to be. Somebody's working hard, but they're working on priorities that don't matter the most anymore. You need to go to them and say so. And then direct them, lead them in the right direction. You can't make them go in that direction. Maybe they don't like it, whatever. But you can lead them in the right direction. And then they get to decide and be responsible for whether or not they take that leadership guidance or not. Because hard work does still matter. It just doesn't create a binding agreement, between you and your employer or a customer or a market or the economy. It's one of the more difficult truths that I think is happening now to a lot of people, but it can also be freeing to realize, just because it's not only effort doesn't mean I can't be strategic in it. I just need to ask better questions. What changed? What's in my control? What's outside of my control? Where is the organization or market rewarding people now? Where is it not? Where is my effort more likely to matter? We're going to all get disappointed. That's life. We'll always have to be making difficult decisions. That doesn't go away. But if we can stop turning every mismatch or every, misstep into some kind of verdict on our self-worth or who we are as a human being, it gets a lot easier, because that helps us move into, okay, yeah, maybe where do I need to do some personal work, and where do I need to change my strategy or my outlook or whatever I'm doing because of the external conditions. Okay, let me get in alignment with that. So that kind of thinking and those good questions are often the first step towards choosing what the next move will be and doing it with better information. So if this brought up something that you've been wrestling with, I'd love to hear about how you're thinking with it, about it. Like, have you had a season where your effort and your results are really out of proportion? And what helped you decide whether to keep going or change directions and pivot or something, let go of it entirely? Leave a comment below, because I read all of them. And I love hearing what's going on for you, because it also helps me know what to create content around, right? Like, I could take a situation that you share with me and, keeping the details out, create a video to address whatever that dynamic is. So also, obviously, if this was helpful, subscribe so you don't miss the next video. I'm going to be creating a lot of leadership content here in the channel. And so you want to subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you know when they come out. And I will see you in the next video.